While growing up, I never thought I would leave India. And in IIT, there are three sort of routes that you can do a PhD. One
19,000 something per month. Sorry, per year. Per year.
What are you doing, Manoj? What are you doing?
No, it's 19,000 something. If you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, Tribo Geek, do subscribe. Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel, Tribo Geek. If you're new to my channel, my name is Manoj, and my channel has a content on lots of videos about masters in tribology, applying masters in Europe, and also travel vlogs. And I've expanded my horizon with respect to PhD videos and doing the interviews with PhDs, etc. However, now in the YouTube, the trending is the video-based podcast, which is also called Vodcast. So most of the YouTubers who are famous makes the videos with lots of celebrities. However, we miss the people who are surrounding us, who are really common and who have made exemplary achievements in their own fields. And we need to listen to them, and we need to understand what they have faced in their lives in order to achieve what they are in. So based on that, I have started this YouTube series on the Tribo Geek Vodcast, where this is my first video with two of my beautiful colleagues. So in today's podcast, let me introduce you guys my first guest. And we have our first guest, Dr. Payal Ganguly, who is a project manager in clinical trials and in Chapel Allerton, University of Leeds. And Dr. Yashaswini Premjith, she is a postdoctoral researcher in the School of Food Science and Nutrition at University of Leeds. Thank you so much for being with me in the Tribo Geek.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much for having us.
So let's start this discussion really casually. I know you guys are nervous. Let me introduce that my channel. As you guys have already seen my channel, that it's on YouTube videos on PhDs and things like that. However, I explain as if we want to expand this horizon with respect to talking to people and understanding what are their real challenges, what they have faced in order to achieve something, right? So I have seen that you guys have achieved so much. I know when I say so much, for me, as in a person who's trying to reach you guys as your ways of doing research and things. So what was the challenges which you guys faced when you wanted to, go to UK and do research and things like that? Did you have any ideas initially when you started this journey in order to do research? Where did you start?
So I did my bachelor's in pharmacy, but before that I also wanted to get into medicine, and I had a year of the gap year, they say that I took a year drop, and then that's when I realized that I didn't get into medicine, but when I started doing my bachelor's in pharmacy, I really liked the technology part, and then I applied for my master's in nanomedicine for coming to the UK.
Okay.
And at the time, I wasn't sure if I really wanted to go into research, but tablet and mechanism and diseases, all of that really fascinated me. So I came to UK, Newcastle University, did a 1 year of masters, and then I went back to India and I worked in two different nanomedicine research groups in Institute of Chemical Technology and IIT Bombay.
Oh, that's nice.
And while I was doing that, I was looking for PhD funding as well. And then I got fellowship from University of Leeds, because by then I knew I wanted to do research, but I wanted to expand a bit further because stem cell science was something was one of my projects in the masters. And that's when it took me quite some time to apply, but I'll talk about that when you ask me those questions later on. It took me quite some time, but eventually it was the masters and the internship that I did before that helped me realize that I wanted to go into for PhD research.
PhD, that's nice. And after that you continued with the postdoc in Leeds as well.
Yes, so PhD I did in human bone marrow stem cells and aging, and then I continued postdoc. I did 6 months technician position as well to bridge the gap in between the PhD and the actual funding, because it was COVID. So there was a bit of difficulty there. And then after 4 years of postdoc, this January onwards, I started working as a project manager for clinical trial management.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. What about you, Yashaswini?
So my journey started with a bachelor's in food technology and management. So that dealt with, I was very interested in food science as such, And because there was a management aspect, I got to understand a little bit more about how industries work, like the economics, supply chain management, and all of that. But going further, I wanted to do my master's in like proper food science. So I went to Banaras Hindu University after writing an entrance test. Like every university has in India, there is this concept of writing an entrance test
yes.
for masters. So there I was in Banaras Hindu University. During that period, so we had 1 year of a research project. So you focus an entire year while studying subjects, you do research on the side. So because it's for a period of an entire year, I understood that I really like research. Initially, like if you would have asked me before starting my master's whether I was going into a PhD, I'd have been like, no, that's for like very brainy people. no PhD. I'll go to an industry and I'll continue working. But then research really, I became very passionate about the research I was doing.
That's
so
nice.
I took this forward, applied for a fellowship. It's called DST Inspire, but I can go into the details later when you ask me. And then I did my PhD from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur.
Okay.
So they have they have an agriculture and food engineering department. So there they have 6 subdomains, and one of it is food process engineering. That's where I did my PhD, and now I'm in the UK doing my postdoc.
That's nice. So when I see this journey, we have a difference of UK PhD and an Indian PhD. So this is something which a person or a student who wants to pursue a PhD in India would also think. Is it good to do PhD in UK or in abroad? Or is it good to do PhD in India? So I know there is 2 opinions, but what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing PhD in UK, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing PhD in India?
So I think for me personally, what I think is it does come down to the situations. While growing up, I never thought I would leave India. And the only reason I applied for a master's and PhD abroad was because I could never clear any of the entrance exams.
That's true.
Because I'm somebody who does better while doing things physically. I'm a kinetic learner. And even I did try entrance exams. We were talking this morning. We were just talking about that this morning. And the fact is, but at the time, after I didn't clear the entrance exam, I took a year drop as well. I didn't think I was worthy of doing research until I had left India. And that's when I realized that my way of learning is different, and while it is absolutely an amazing feat when people clear these exams and do well, that may not be suitable for me because of my way of learning.
Yes.
And that doesn't take away my ability of doing the kind of research I've done and establish myself. So for me, it came down to a situational thing that I said, well, I've got a dream. I was really wanting to do nanomedicine and drug delivery, and I wasn't getting a chance of doing that in my country. So I didn't want that to limit my dreams. And that's the reason I looked outside of home country. I still miss my family quite a lot.
Yes.
If I could, I would probably still do it there. But because the situation was like that, I came here. And what I found over here, the difference from obviously what PhD in India, I think Yash will give a better idea about that. But what I found while doing PhD here, and not everybody's journey is the same here as well. People can have different kinds of journeys here. But I was lucky because I got a really supportive community. I came here because of my supervisor, Elena Jones, and I'd written to her. I'd applied multiple times, and I'd kind of given up on doing a PhD once I got my job in IIT Bombay. I was like, that's it. It's 20 minutes from home in Mumbai. That's a luxury. I love working there. And Leeds was the last PhD I applied for. I had an Excel sheet and I crossed over 120 places I applied to for PhD.
That's a long number.
Yeah, and I think after the Leeds application, I deleted that Excel sheet. I think it would have been so much more handier if I had it today, but at that time...
I'll share it with my audience as well.
I would have loved to share that, but at that time, it only reminded me of how many things I couldn't get done.
Yes.
And my sister used to sit down with me, and every evening I would sit down and say, this department, this university, what was the TOEFL score requirement, what was the field, what was the actual exact topic. I had an entire thing, and then after that, I just left. I was like, I'm not going to do it. And the last PhD I applied for in Leeds is what I got the scholarship for.
That's good.
And over here, basically, I think PhDs can be quite longer in India, up to 5 years. It's not 3 to 5 years thing. Over here as well, you can finish in 3 years. I have had colleagues who finish in 2.5 years as well. And most of the time they'll have the fellowship. And for me personally, it was the community that I got. We were quite a few people from different parts of the country, parts of the world, and we all were able to kind of communicate with each other. We all were having similar kind of issues. so we could bounce off ideas each other.
That's nice.
And the community was really supportive, including my supervisor. So that was the biggest advantage that I had, and that I was able to, even though it was competitive because I got the departmental fellowship. And it was competitive, so I had to wait one round because I didn't clear that one, and the next round I got it. Okay. So it was still competitive, but they didn't require me to give like an exam or something. It was based on what merit we already had.
All right.
Yeah.
What about you, Yashaswini? How was PhD in India?
So PhD in India, I think it has been one incredible experience. Like Payal mentioned, it was a 5-year journey, and incidentally, we get a 5-year fellowship. So I was on a DST Inspire fellowship. So this is by the Department of Science and Technology, affiliated to Government of India. So I had this fellowship that supported me during my fellowship, during my period of doing PhD from IIT Kharagpur. The process has been, I think if I look back, it has been one incredible journey. So the advantages of doing a PhD in India from IIT especially is, I didn't, like, people do say that, funding or access to equipment, I didn't face any problems there because I did have access to like really good state-of-the-art equipment facilities because they do have that funding. Secondly, the networking, because you are in an institute where you have mechanical engineers, you have electrical engineers. If you network well, you do get a good bunch of people that you can, go and seek ideas from, or say you're stuck on a problem and they can give their perspective. So there was no lack of perspective or lack of something that's stopping you from pursuing a deeper, getting deeper insights from your research. So that was a good one. The third, like, really nice advantage, I'd say, we had this concept of doing a coursework. So this is something that I don't think they do it in the UK. You don't have a year for doing a coursework. So when I started
but
my
there
PhD,
is some other PhDs like
CDTs
where they do
do that.
coursework.
All right, interesting. So we had this, like, we had to do a 1-year coursework. So you could pick any course that you wanted in any department that you wanted. You go attend the classes. You have to, have a minimum C grade to pass it. But the interesting thing is, you get to you during your masters doing a particular subject, you wouldn't think, okay, I'll go sit in biochemical engineering and listen to their lectures. So this was a fantastic opportunity for me to really learn about other fields and borrow some concepts for my research.
Yes.
So this 1 year really helped me, and this was, I think, the most relaxing period of my PhD because you're still, not suddenly thrown into the whole publish papers, do research. You're slowly sort of getting into the process. So this was a very nice this thing that I really liked. But again, this can be seen as it's extending your PhD duration. So you don't essentially finish in 3 years if you can't wrap up your research in the next 2 years.
2 years. Okay.
So this was, I think, you can look at it as a plus point as well as a negative one. I think facilities wise, collaboration wise, and of course I had like fantastic lab mates. You're ever stuck with a problem, call for a lab meeting immediately, and everybody's giving ideas. Okay, maybe this went wrong, maybe that went wrong. So that brainstorming session, all of that was really good. I think that support system and being on a campus that provided all the facilities, that was a really advantageous one.
That's good.
Yeah.
So when we look into this perspective of Indian PhD and UK PhD, we see most of the experiences would be like, we do get lots of commonalities between the advantages of doing PhDs both in both places. However, when we look into the time scale, most of the time in UK or in abroad, I can't say about everywhere in abroad because US has 5 years,
5 to 7 years,
7 years PhD, which is similar to India as well. But in UK and European countries, I could say it is mostly for 3 years, and it is much relaxed period of time. I mean, I can't say relaxed period of time. Rather, it would be like we will be put on to the research as soon as we get into the PhD, where we do the literature for 6 months or 3 months, and then we'll be on the labs on doing stuff. But in India, we do have courseworks where 1 year you do the course and it will be a bit relaxed in order to do the thing. With respect to funding as well, again, in UK, they do have lots of fundings and they do have like departmental fundings, which Payal got, and I got the funding from one of the institutes in the university, which is called Bragg Center for Materials Research. So, and there are also fundings which is called as Marie Curie fundings for the European Union fundings, and there are also EPSRC UKRI fundings, which are the national fundings. When it comes to India as well, there are fundings such as DST, which you mentioned. I don't know if there is any departmental or university-based funding.
Yes. So in IIT, there are three sort of routes that you can do a PhD. One is you bring in your own fellowship. It's called the individual fellowship route.
Okay.
So you have to have a gate score and you clear an entrance test. Say like you're getting CSIR funding. So you're funded by that body, CSIR. Or like in my case, it was DST. So you get your own individual funding. You have a backing body that gives you the fund to carry out the research in this particular facility. Second route is you do it through the institute funding. So
Yes.
there are MHRD funds that in IIT. So it's like they go through the institute route. The third is the sponsored category. So the industry has a candidate and those PhDs are actually much faster. So they're sponsored candidates, they're sponsored by the industry and they continue doing their research at IIT for a period of 3 years, however long the sponsorship with the industry is, and they get a PhD. So there are three routes where you can get your...
Do you want to add anything, Payal?
Yeah, I was thinking because for some of my friends who have come to do PhD from India here as well, for that there are some options. So if you've never done a PhD or you've not done a master's abroad, you can apply for INLAC Foundation, and there are other the British Council funding and Commonwealth scholarships.
Yes.
These are the ones that you can do from India to come abroad as well. I think we have, I think we've got Richa who had like a funding from India, but then that was for coming here for the UK as well. I cannot remember exactly which one it was. She's mentioned that to me, but she'll so that there are opportunities available for people who want to come. And I think Yash's experience is amazing because when I was in IIT Bombay and when I was in ICT Mumbai, both the places I was working alongside a lot of colleagues who were doing their PhDs, and they all had their own kind of journeys. They all had their kind of their own path that they were choosing, but that was after they had cleared the entrance exams and after they had gotten in there. And I think that is what sometimes becomes a bit of a challenge, considering the population and the brilliance that India has.
Yes.
How many people have got the brilliance and how many seats are available. And there are multiple factors that come into play for how many of us are able to get through and like I said, initially when you don't get through, if you don't manage to get through, you question yourself a lot, and it takes some time to realize that that is not the only deciding factor, that you can. So I think that was my biggest learning from all my failed entrance exams.
Adding to that, like writing the entrance test, there is another factor that comes in. They screen you out on the basis of your GPA also. So this is why, so for writing the entrance test also, you have to have a certain GPA for you to even be called for writing the entrance test. So a lot of really smart candidates, I know a lot of people who didn't have that 8 GPA, they had 7.78, 7.6. But they're brilliant, right? They didn't even get the chance to, apply to such. So that becomes sort of a limiting factor.
I think that's one of the most limiting factor in India is having more brilliance. Like lots of people are competing. And it's since it's also like so many competitions with respect to every universities, and we have very handful of top universities in India, and it's really hard to accommodate all the students across the different states for those universities. And in my case as well, it was the thing that when I wanted to do PhD, I always thought that I would do in abroad because it would be much easier for me to get rather than getting it in India. So that's another thing. With respect to living expenses, because most of the PhDs always think that since it's a commitment for a longer time, where in India it's 5 years and in UK it's 3.5 years, 4 years. So was it enough for you guys when the amount what you used to get, like the stipends in India and in UK?
So I was funded for 3 years, and what I got as a student's PhD stipend was sufficient for me. I managed to do Europe trips. I managed to have 1 brunch, 2 brunches out every week. Managed to travel to India every year. So I think it comes down to managing your finances, and that's one thing that teaches you to become independent as well. I had a lot of my lab mates who always asked me, how did I manage to have more than 1 meal outside in a month? And I think it came down to the fact that while growing up we've been like, we don't spend on things we don't need to spend on. I don't necessarily have to go out and drink more than 1 or 2 drinks every single weekend. So I think we just need to figure out what can drain the finances, and we keep it, because for, those 3 years were great. My challenge came when because my funding was for 3 years, and I started doing my writing in the fourth year, and my fourth year was not funded.
Yeah.
That is where the challenge came. So, but because I had savings from the PhD, I was able to sustain that too. Yes, I did have to, cut down on my brunches the last year, obviously, or going out. I didn't go back home that year, and I think if I applied for hardship funds, there are funds available in the university. If you want, you can apply for those. But at the time, I wasn't aware of all of them, and I felt like, yes, I would be able to finish this. And then I found I started doing some demonstrations, some part-time teaching and stuff. But if you're able to manage your time, and if you're living in a shared house, you'll be fine. However, if you're a student with a family, and you need to have a different kind of a whole house and stuff, that will need a bit more planning. Dependency and stuff. And obviously, you're not taxed on the student stipend. That's all yours. So that's a big advantage. But you need to plan. It'd be easier to have a shared house. It'd be easy if you're closer to university or wherever your workplace is. So those things need to be planned a bit better.
Yeah. What about you, Yashaswini? You in India?
So for in terms of across board, I think we all generally agree that academia, it's not. You're not there for the money. You're there for your passion. You're not there for
the love of research.
You're there for the love of research. So if I say that no, it was again, I think like Payal mentioned, it comes down to how you're managing it. So for me personally, I felt like with the DST funding that I was getting, and also the added point was being on the IIT campus, right? So the funding was enough. I think I could manage pretty well. So the 5 years that I was doing my PhD, it did extend to a little beyond 5 years. So I had to finish, wrap up writing the thesis and submission and all. It took 2-3 extra months. But for 5 years I was funded. The funding was good. More than anything that helped me with the funding and that didn't really pinch me was I was living in, so IIT Kharagpur is not exactly like a city, right? It's a little further away from Kolkata. So, but the campus, if you're inside the campus, you have everything at your disposal. You have markets, you have, you don't have to really step out of the campus for anything. So, didn't really realize that, the world outside can be expensive. We had and to be very clear, we had cafe coffee day, we had Subway, we had McDonald's, you name it, everybody has an outlet there inside. And it's all subsidized for student prices, right? So, you pay for at least, again, if you're watching this 10 years from now, you'll be like, how did you pay 56 rupees? How did you pay 56 rupees for cafe coffee day? But I remember, dude, we used to pay 56 rupees for one entire drink and all, and then you go outside. I used to go back home to Bangalore, and then it's 300 rupees outside, you cut off from reality sometimes. And as a PhD, you're mostly very indoorsy. You finish your lab work, you go late in the night, and So I think those entire 5 years, I didn't feel the pinch really. But of course, you can feel the pinch if, say, for some reasons, your stipend has not come on time. You need to, like Payal said, be very prudent about how you're saving and how you're going about it. But for sure, I think if you are well funded for a PhD, considering your cost of living and all of that, I think it's a good amount. I think it can sustain you.
Yes. So most of the time when we do this kind of interviews with PhD students and anything which I make videos on, most of them come up with, can you give us a number how much you used to get? So would you mind to give what is the stipends you used to get in UK and in India?
So I did my PhD in 2016. So 2016 to 2019, I did my lab work, and 2020 I submitted my thesis and had my viva. So at that time, it was about £14,000 per year, which is just more than, I think, 1,100. So, and obviously it goes up, a few percentage every year. But it was around 1,100 to 1,200 per month.
You,
so in our case, because it's a 5-year degree, so we have stages. So initially you're a junior research fellow, then JRF, and then you do this thing called, so when you, like I said, you have the first year where you're doing your courses, then in the second year you do a registration seminar. So that's where you have a doctoral scrutiny committee and you have all the people in the department attending. So you give your plan of work and say, okay, this is what my PhD is going to be about, critiques, any suggestions, changes. Then you continue doing your work, you have a bunch of data, preliminary data, you do an enhancement seminar where you're converted. If you're good enough, if you establish that, this is my PhD, I'm doing the groundwork, this is how far I've got, and I'm also looking forward to publishing papers. You do a set of, you meet the criteria, you get a promotion. So that essentially hikes your salary. So the first 2 years, I was getting 31,000 rupees. And after the enhancement, it becomes 35,000. But now I know that it
Every
has
month.
increased. Yes, every month. Per month,
Per
it's
month, yeah.
31,000 and 35,000 from the second year onwards until the fifth
It
year.
increases.
It did increase. Like I think my juniors are now getting more than that. There has been a hike. The government is doing great stuff. So
Interesting, because when I was working as a project assistant in Institute of Chemical Technology, and then I went on to work as research engineer in IIT. That time, I think the JRF fellowship was 16,000 per month.
Ooh.
It's 2014. I'm talking about 2014,
Yeah.
and then I think that's when it started changing.
Yeah.
And then next year, I think people started getting 28 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
But I still had friends who had moved from some other place to Mumbai, and I'm like, how are you going to sustain on 16,000 rupees per month in Mumbai in that rent?
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely become so much better now.
Yeah. So just to update Payal's numbers, because I'm getting that PhD cycle now. So we are getting 19,000 something per month. Sorry, per year. Per year.
What are you doing, Manoj? What are you doing?
No, it's 19,000 some change per year, which is around like 1,600. I'm sorry, I'm gonna put that on the thing, like how much exactly we are getting the numbers.
That's kaching.
So, yeah. Yeah. So, let's just to move on. We spoke about like where your journey started, as in like from the normal private universities from home, and then you went for UK as to do research and PhD postdoc, now project manager. You started from a private university, then you went for MTech in IIT, and then you went for your PhD in IIT. So this has been like a varied journey, but you have started somewhere from the private university, which I also started from. So most of the students who are watching, because in India there is again a kind of a class with respect to academia, where people coming from IITs and people coming from private institutes, we always have this like kind of a demotivating factor for the private university, saying that, oh, we are from private university, we wouldn't be getting a nice university later or a career later. Everyone who comes from IITs would go for PhDs and do research and stuff. What do you want to say for that? Like, what was your experience with respect to coming from private university?
I think initially I did try to, like I said, I had a year drop and everything, so I did try to get into like public and government in university stuff, but I didn't have the scores, so the only way was to I need to go to a private environment, and but luckily where I did my bachelor's was a good place, and not everybody was into research at the time, but because these were new and they didn't really always have the government funding.
Yes.
I know there are a lot of teachers and professors who are even now trying to get funding, but then I think there's when they apply for funding, they are informed, you're a private university. Why do you need the funding? We are going to get the funding. So I think that they are also fighting that. And not everybody will be into research, and that's absolutely fine. You don't have, if you want to go and bake a cake, have a bakery, do that, doesn't matter. But I think in terms of pursuing the interest, we need to look a bit outside of what we are given.
That's true.
At every stage.
Yes.
And I've started doing that very late now. But I think if we keep on looking, like, what Yashu mentioned about, having networking from that exposure she had, it's going to play a huge role even going ahead. So I think there are barriers, but I also think if people are determined enough, they will find a way. And that can change. Like maybe at some point you want to do a PhD, but at some point you said, no, I want to open a dance academy. That's okay.
It's okay, yeah.
Whatever brings you more purposeful or more purpose, more joy, we need to be flexible enough with that. So I didn't answer your question, I don't know.
No, it does. No, it does answer my question, because what I got to understand from your perspective is that even irrespective of you come from university, it's the determination what takes you into that particular field. Because I see most of my friends as well, like who did bachelor's with me from a private university, and then not everyone came to research or PhD or things. So they chose to go for a private company and get a good software jobs who are doing really very well.
Yeah.
However, there are certain people who are doing PhDs. One of my friends is doing PhD in Austria. So it completely depends on your interest.
Yeah.
So irrespective of where you come from, the determination what you have in order to do what in future, that's where it drives the path, and then you would choose the path and it just goes smoothly in there. I mean, I can't say smoothly, but yeah, you would face a lot of hurdles, but again, it's what you're having the determination that takes you in that path. What's your opinion, Yashaswini?
So I agree with Payal on this again. Like starting, I'd say, you're finishing your class 12. In India, you have 11th, 12th, and then you're finishing class 12. Not everybody has that clarity of, okay, what am I going to be doing when I'm 30 years old?
Yes.
You don't have that vision, and I was also one of those people. If they had asked me in class 12, I was like, okay, should I go for English literature? Should I study journalism? Should I go into something completely different? But then I did know that there was one thing. Someone made me go through this whole experiment. Okay, what really moves you? I, as a kid, also I hated food going waste. So that was one starting point. I was like, okay, I don't like this, and then I got some guidance on, okay, maybe go into a course on this. Look into ways how you can maybe prevent this in the future. So I started out with that. I won't say that I started out blindly. Like I knew a lot of classmates who said, food technology, I just came because I have to do something. Because I was in a college where it was a really good college again. It had, so this is Loyola Academy in Hyderabad. It's affiliated to Osmania University. So Loyola Chennai has also got the same branch.
Okay.
So I had like really nice teachers. We had very good lab facilities, and more than anything, they gave us an opportunity to look out. Like you had support for going and doing industrial internships. So I interned at Coca-Cola. I interned at AP Vijaya Dairy back then. So we had a lot of exposure, and they did give us all the facilities to really branch out and see, okay, what all can I do with my thing. So I think ultimately it comes down to, like she said, grabbing opportunities and being diligent about, okay, I need to get from here to here. There is going to be struggle, but how else can I jump from place to place? So I applied for masters across India. Like there are several universities actually. Like you have NIFTEM, you have CSIR, CFTR, dream, the dream for most food technologists. You have DFRL in Mysore again. So there are a lot of options, but again, everything comes down to writing those entrance tests, clearing those interviews. You have a process, you do that, and again, highly competitive because you have for everything you have like 2,000, 3,000 people applying or even more. So clearing those, and then I went to Banaras Hindu University. So again, this was not IIT BHU, this is Banaras Hindu University's Department of Food Science and Dairy Science, and this comes under the Institute of Agricultural Sciences. So it is in the same campus, like IIT BHU and BHU are in the same campus, and our department was affiliated to the Institute of Agricultural Sciences. So again, we could access facilities, like I could go to material science for doing my X-ray diffraction analysis. So you had exposure to different lab facilities. So I think at BHU, I had a proper idea of what research looks like. Research in my field looks like, and I had a really nice supervisor who I think he's the one who was like, no, you are meant for academics. Because I was convinced that no, I am not going into PhD because you have a perception, right? You're thinking PhDs for people who are like, born geniuses. They have like some idea.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know. There is this thing, and that was something that I always kept thinking in masters. Like, no. Maximum, I'll do masters and then I'll go branch into industry, do a job and continue. But then my supervisor really pushed me in the right direction. He gave me projects, like other than the main research that I was doing, he made sure that I took on like side projects. So someone else is working on an idea. Go join them. Go see what can you do.
Very nice.
Which is really nice. So I learned about antimicrobial. So it was very different from, the project that I was in. So that really got my interest for, and I was like, okay, I can do research. Not bad. I have ideas. You have a problem, you have a hypothesis, you need to get to the. So I think from there it just became, IIT became easier to.
That's true. I think what I hear from your perspective is having a good, person with you who could guide you into getting to things and do stuff. That is one of the major factors which determines, key factor.
Yes.
So, and also it is like not everyone are like geniuses. Like research is not something like which is done by geniuses. The research is done by people who are good in perseverance, right?
Exactly.
And you, in that perseverance, you would find something which is like miraculously, like something which is innovative, and that's how all the scientists came up through as well. It's not like everyone's a born genius. Of course, there would be an exception in having a born genius. That's a different thing. But not all the scientists who have got Nobel prizes or who have got a famous like recognitions and stuff, they are not like all born geniuses, right? So to continue with, I wanted to ask about, like, since people also have this perspective that PhD is a lengthy journey of like 3 years, 5 years, it's really hard to keep our perseverance going and the motivation required in order to do that. So what was the secret for you guys? Because now after PhD, you're pursuing postdoc, and you have done postdoc, and now you're a senior manager. So like, what was your motivation to keep going?
I think the main thing, especially when you are close to your family and you're living abroad, it can become quite difficult. But the one thing that kept me going was doing things I enjoyed. So music, going on walks, building a social circle that helps you, that believes in you even when you don't believe in yourself. Having the people who want you to win and not just do well, but they're okay that yes, you do well without a comparison. That is something that we really need. And I think the thing was because when I was doing my PhD, I already had 2 years of work experience in the lab and internship. So I knew scientific experiments, 90% will fail, 10% becomes the actual study. I was aware of that. But I had peers who had started their PhD. They were I think 3 to 4 years younger than me, probably some of them even half a decade, 5 years younger than me. And they'll come straight after their masters or their bachelors if they're doing an integrated one. And if an experiment didn't work out, it really upset them. And I felt really bad, but I was so used to it. So experiment-wise, it wasn't a problem. But you go through stages, you meet people who may or may not be encouraging. Sometimes you have difficulty in terms of you have a big supervision team. It can, even though it's very supportive, you have to go through all of their comments, and that can take time. That can really be tiring sometimes. But definitely do things that you enjoy. Like, if you like cooking, if you like going for walks, if you like music, you like dancing, getting out of lab or work or office and home. You need to find things that you enjoy outside of your work.
Right.
You have to do that.
What about you, Yashaswini?
For sure, 100% agree with what she says. Because first, support system, you need to have like a proper social circle. And for me, it was having friends outside of the lab. They were really close friends who you can go and you have your ugly crying and you read those people during your PhD because a lot can go wrong. Anything that can go wrong. Very right. So you're not really set up for that, but then through the process, it's a learning curve. You learn through the process, and there's going to be a lot of failure. But you need to have the support system to hold you during those periods. And I also had a fantastic lab group that had become like family because you're spending most of the day in the lab, and these are the people who are around you, who've seen you during failed experiments, during successful experiments, those few times where it's so that is a good one. Secondly, it's very easy to become very caught up with experiments and say and convince yourself that you don't have time to pursue a hobby or take a break, or you just feel like no, you need to keep going, otherwise you're not going to be successful. And that is a mentality I think I sort of embraced lovingly. And I think that was one of my regrets because it leads to a burnout. Like you don't realize it, but it does come. It's going to be really bad when that happens and you don't realize it. But I think that is something I would change going back in time, that I would take breaks. There were people who took breaks, like treat a weekend as a weekend, but no, I sort of I was like, no, that's still treated that as an extra few hours to do extra. So
I think this is really a very good point. Both of you made this nice point, having like hobbies in order to keep yourself active and motivated other than work. Because I have seen this as well, and I have implemented this in my PhD right now. I'm in my 3rd year. So most of the time I have seen people who get caught up with the PhD and then they just do and then they'll be depressed at the end when they don't get the results experiments after putting so much of efforts. Because we know that these are the experiments which would fail at one point, and the success rate is like we always do when we are doing statistics. We always do it's 95% intel, right? 5% will be a failure. So you need to understand that and have your life. And also there is another thing. This is 3 or 5 years of your life.
Exactly.
This is PhD is a part of life. PhD is not your life.
Yes.
Yeah. So differentiate that PhD is only a part of your life, and you have life.
Yes.
You have to lead that along with PhD, not just that. Oh no, I'm doing PhD and 3 years and 5 years I'm just gonna be doing this. No, I think that's really good and important point that people need to understand, whoever it is, like who is doing PhD abroad or PhD in India. And another point which I would like to highlight is about PhD in abroad is very different from PhD at home, because since the distance is a bit longer, if in case PhD you're doing it in different states in India, it would be much easier for you to go to home like within like a day or something. But for us, another thing doing abroad, I think Payal could relate this so much. Because it will be very expensive to go home, and it is also a long day, and you should ask like permissions in order to go for a month. And so, do you have any experience as such, like where you had a breakdown and then you had to go home and then
I don't think I've said this out loud, but I will say today. I think during the first 2 years was still okay, but it was very common for me to have kind of a breakdown every 6 months. Once in 6 months, I would have a massive breakdown, and then I felt much better. And after the end of first year, when I had 2 massive breakdowns, in spite of everything going absolutely fine, I'm like, I'm missing home. I'm missing family. I'm not able to hug my mom, my sister. I'm not able to argue with my dad. All of those things. And that's when you need to build coping mechanisms.
Yes.
You need to find places, you need to find people where you can feel like, it won't be home, but you can be yourself. You can be your mad self. You can, and luckily, the beauty of being abroad is that you will find that across different cultures. You will find people from your own culture, from our own cultures, but you'll also find people like that, and you'll see there's so much more common that the world we have shares. So that was, I think that still is, even though I've been in Leeds for 9 years now, I still talk to my family twice every day on video call. I still miss them. They visit me here in August, and I still miss them a lot. But yes, as a student, because you're figuring out so much out and you don't know what you're going to do after the PhD, that was extremely challenging. But that's what I did. I would talk to them regularly, but I also luckily had a lot of good friends, really good friends, and with some of them are really close even now.
That's true.
So that really helped.
Yeah. Going further, so we have spoken about like applying for PhD, was the motivation required, difference between Indian PhD and things. So there's another question, and then people do ask about is after PhD, what do you do after PhD? Which is again like in our language there is this thing called Yaksha Prashne. So a question which was asked in the Mahabharata, where for the Yudhishthira, Yama comes and asks like Yaksha Prashne, the questions which cannot be answered at all. So this is one such question where what do you want to do after PhD? So when it comes to after PhD, people do have options of academia. That's one of the easiest. I mean, I can't say easiest, but one of the easy,
more obvious
options.
Choices,
And then there is industrial research or industrial managerial positions and things like that. I know that you guys have a varied experiences with respect to this. Payal has got like a academy experience, and you have also tried for industries, and now you are working as a project manager. It's a completely different thing. And even you, Yashaswini has like doing a postdoc in the academia, and I don't know what would you want to do in afterwards. So what's your thoughts on this?
Let's actually go first on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
After this postdoc.
Yeah. Would you like to prefer industry or academia?
So my experience with industry has been limited to the time where I was doing my bachelor's and I interned at industries.
Okay.
And this was purely from like quality assurance. I've seen the different aspects where you can sort of fit into an industry.
Yeah.
But this was through the vision of like, a bachelor student.
Yes.
So I've seen R&D labs, I've seen the quality assurance, I've seen, but I don't think I've seen enough for me to decide where exactly my fit is like perfect.
Okay.
Right? So industrial jobs are appealing, sure. And from my conversations with people who've had a stint at both the industry and who are in academia, I've understood, okay, there are plus points, there are pros and cons always. And one word that academics throw around a lot, like people who've been in the industry and who come back to academia, one word that I've picked up from everybody in academia is flexibility.
Yes.
Flexibility in academia that you can't get in it. But again, this is not my first-hand experience. So I think going forward, maybe if I do get an opportunity where I can sort of bridge that gap between, maybe in a very interesting project where I'm actually connected to both academia and industry. Although the current project that I'm in does deal with 3 industrial partners, and I'm getting an understanding of, okay, the fast-paced research that you talk about, like you need monthly updates and you need weekly updates. So I get that as well. But I think working at an industry that I don't have, maybe going forward, if an opportunity pops up and if I'm the good fit and someone's watching and who thinks I'm fit, pitch. But open for it.
Sure. If someone's watching who can hire Yashaswini,
guys, she's brilliant. She's brilliant.
Go for it.
Guys, first time.
Thank you, guys.
What about you, Payal?
So my first exposure to industry was when I was doing my internship in Johnson & Johnson Mumbai and Unichem Laboratories in Mumbai.
Oh, that's nice.
This was a part of my bachelor's. So all of us were doing our bachelor's. In the third year, in the last trimester of the third year, we had to do internships, and some of us got hospitals, some of us got industry. So going to Johnson & Johnson, and I think that was one. I think I should have answered this in the first. This is one of the reasons why I really liked research and technology. My interest in technology came from how Johnson & Johnson made their band-aids in the entire manufacturing unit. I could sit there the whole time. The fact that they had this fabric, the other fabric, then they had the benzyl choline chloride, then they had the cutting, then they had the packaging, and I'm like, tuck. It was brilliant. So that's where my actual interest started. And then after I finished my bachelor's, I was applying for masters. I had given my TOEFL and GRE. I had applied to US, I had applied to UK, and I was looking for jobs. And I got a job in one of the companies in Mumbai. But obviously, because it was just bachelor's, the salary was quite low. And at the same time, I also had an offer letter for nanomedicine from Newcastle. So I went for that. And then after that, I came back to India and did 2 more labs, kind of research positions. And after that, when I did my PhD, so I have looked for most opportunities. I have seeked out industry positions, and one barrier that I faced when I was a student was that I would get, even for postdocs actually, I got messages on LinkedIn from companies saying, can we contact you, we think your profile is great, and I would have a chat with them, and they would stop at the visa section like, oh, we don't sponsor visa. That happened multiple times.
That's right, yeah.
So then I moved to global talent visa, and then last year and a couple of months ago as well, like my contract was coming to an end, so I was applying for positions. There were so many places, so many good companies, big companies, where I made it to the 3rd round of interview, and they said I was a really good candidate, but they also mentioned that they hired someone internally. And after this happened multiple number of times, I kind of moved away from applying to industries. Again, that is my journey. It doesn't have to be everybody else's. So now I'm more kind of looking for my own fellowships, because the one thing that I've spoken to my friends in industry, I think what my friends meant about in terms of flexibility, what Yashu mentioned, is that if you have a research idea, if you want to pursue your research, academia is the place. Yes, there will be challenges, there will be politics everywhere. But if your focus is you don't mind the research area or the disease area, you have the techniques, you just want to apply them, and you want, the priority is you need the money for whatever reason, or you would like to make more money and have a structure, complete structure, then you should aim for industry. I think that's what I have understood. And there's no hard and fast rule that you go to industry and you cannot come back here, or you are here and you cannot go there. Especially for my personal journey, because I was more into research contracts in University of Leeds, and now I'm more on a project manager position. So this is something I'm navigating now, because I still really like research, and I'm absolutely loving my project management as well for clinical trials. So I kind of want to do, if I get some fellowship, I want to do this and this part-time and see how to navigate. So I think it will come down to really honing down what do you want and finding a way to do it.
That's true. That's nice. I think we see a nice a bridge between the academia and industry whenever we talk about research, because something what we do in academia has to be implemented practically, which industries are the ones where we go and then we do it. However, academia gives a flexibility in doing research in some things which industries are not interested in, because since it's an early stage research, it is mostly done in the academia and then it goes to the industry, which is completely fine. So it's again up to us to decide where do we want to go and do stuff. So I think Payal also mentioned about visas, because if you want to do PhDs in abroad, I think visas are something which is also very important, and it also depends on what is your future interest and where do you want to settle down and things like that. I just want to touch this topic on the visa as well. The reason is, most of the time when you are doing PhDs in abroad, we get student visa, which is around like, it depends on your entire duration of your PhD, and depending on that, they give an extra 6 months for your visa. So for example, in my case, 3.5 years is my funding. They have given for 4 years the visa. So that's a student visa what we get. So there is nothing like PhD is still given, like considered as a research, as a kind of a job, as not a job, where we don't pay taxes. However, we get a student visa, we don't get anything. However, there are different visas again, in order to get not a student visa, which is like global talent visa, which is for those top 50 or 10 institutes in UK, where you get, we are talking about UK here, where you get within this certain fundings, they give you global talent visa, and now it's most commonly given for all the postdocs and senior researchers who come. But for PhDs, global talent is given only depending on your funding. For example, if you're getting a Marie Curie funding, you get a global talent visa. And what is the advantage of having global talent visa? This is a visa where it does not require sponsorship in order to get into a company later on, and it's one of the reputed visa with respect to, because it's given for the highly talented researchers in the world to do research in UK. So do you want to add something about global talent?
When I was doing my PhD, I had another colleague who was doing his PhD via Marie Curie, and just to let you know that he was actually on a work visa, because the Marie Curie fellowship that he got at the time, it's substantial, and I think he and a few more fellows, there were quite a few of them, and they had to kind of pay taxes, so they were on a student visa. They were on so the skilled worker visa at the time, which was tier 2, and now it's called skilled worker. Now for global talent visa, it's not just certain, so there are different ways of getting global talent visa. I also have another friend who is not a researcher but has got a number of patents working on, like not on a PhD, just bachelor's and master's, and is in the US, and they have applied for global talent visa and they got it. But in terms of research specific stuff, there are colleagues who have been hired on the global talent visa. But my global talent visa, there was another route that I used. It was called the peer review. So I didn't apply for a job that said we'll give you global talent visa. I was because we have postdoctoral is on contracts. Contracts come to an end, and if you're on a skilled worker visa, if your job comes to an end, your contract comes to an end, your visa comes to an end. So it's a vicious cycle. And I was kind of not happy with the cycles that I had faced of, right, job is coming to an end, when does the visa need to come to an end? So you cannot really plan anything in your life. Because of that, I spoke to some friends, and they said you can do a peer review where you can apply for it. If you've got certain number of publications and if you've got a decent profile, you can apply for it. And I have been telling a lot of my friends, if I know they've got the profile, please apply for it, because then you're not dependent on if your job comes to an end, you don't have to leave the UK, and you can apply for PR in 3 years' time.
That's good. PR is a permanent residency, which you would be applying after the visa. The only reason for getting a student visa or a work visa or the global talent visa is to apply for PR if you have an interest in settling down in UK and stuff like that. And also it's a very irony, right? Like when we talk about the visas, research is something which we again struggle with, and there are these diplomacies which is like kind of barriers and hurdles for us in order to do research abroad and elsewhere. So we have to think about how much are we going to spend money on doing the visa, things like that, which is really something like a kind of hurdles on hurdles, because getting into research itself is something challenging, and upon that visas, and then we pay NHS surcharge, which is another £2,000, which is like 2 lakh rupees, and things like that. These are all something like which you really have to worry about, but that does not mean that it's really tough. Of course, when you are doing in this process, like once you get it done, and you will be done with it. So I think we did cover about the visas and the motivation to do PhD and stuff. So how about experiences? Like, let's leave PhD aside now. Let's talk about your experiences, as in when you are doing research in India, as in UK. What's your experiences like? Like, how's life in UK? How's life in India?
Okay.
Do you want to go with this one? Yeah.
Life.
As in general, other than academia or other than research.
Other than academia, other than research. Okay, you're talking about experience as I can talk about the fun parts of
Yes.
doing a PhD at IIT. So the fests, the events that happen across
That's right.
campus, oh my god, it's amazing. And if you can always say, oh no, I'm too busy for this, but towards the end, you're really frustrated and you start going to these fests. It's amazing.
Yeah, I understand. When you say fest, because when I was in my bachelor's, I used to attend these tech fest in IIT Bombay, and
Indigo and stuff.
I attended one of the fest in
Kharagpur.
It's
Yeah.
called NSSC, National Student Space Challenge,
Oh,
which was
yeah.
organized by the astronomy
Yeah.
people or something. And it's really fascinating to see that kind of vibes, what happens, like the fest, what happens in India, because those are the fests which we miss in abroad, because our fest in abroad is completely like very different, very, very different when it comes to the student fest in India. Because I've been to even tech fest in Technic something, it's an IIT BHU.
They have Kashi Yatra, but they also have this tech
Technics
fest.
or something. It's called a tech fest, where we went for some kind of a challenge on the RC car and stuff. It's quite interesting to see the varied fest. But so when I was in bachelor, this is one of my best experiences I had. Was I used to look into these fests, when is this going to happen, and I used to mark that on my calendar, schedule, so that I would attend at least one fest during my 1 year of my bachelor's, so that I attended like 5 IIT fests when I was in my bachelor's, though I'm not from IIT, which is really nice, it's having a good experience. But however, it's completely different in UK and abroad. What was your experience as in life?
So my friends who have done the PhDs in India, or even have lived in a hostel in India,
Yes.
they have a very different experience, because I have never lived in a hostel. I've never lived away. When I was in Mumbai, I was always with family. Like, even though we moved across different parts of India, I've never left family at all.
Yeah.
So my experience, the first thing when I went for my master's in Newcastle as well, was just getting to know how do I live by myself, and how do I. So for me, it wasn't. I didn't even approach fests or things like, because at that time I'm like, how do I live with myself? How do I manage these things? And when I came back to Leeds, I was a bit better equipped. That's when I started going for conferences and other festivals like that. I think if you look at the ones that suit your interest, you will find a lot of things that you can learn and grow from, and you can network from. Obviously, they will not have the kind of music or the kind of games that we play back at home, because culturally it's a bit different. But you will learn a lot about different cultures here. So that's the good thing, that you will find that there are people from different countries, very similar mindsets, very similar, I want to do this. You will find collaborations and networks. And that is so satisfying, and that is so beautiful in its own way, because you can be really a truly global person, because you get the exposure. We don't have the same, the music or stuff like that, but as human beings and as scientists, we can think in the similar way. So I think that's what I gained over here, even though I really missed out on a lot of stuff, back home.
I think to add on for this, I also feel like since I did my master's in abroad as well, and then like in Europe and different countries, and in PhD in here, I feel that there is whenever we say that there is a cultural difference, we always try to find the similarities of cultures when we come abroad, when we meet different European people or people from different countries like Mexico. So we always have these like similar things but different names or different things. Or for example, when we talk about languages, we always try to find those words which are very similar to the languages. Ananas is one of the languages. In Spanish, in Portuguese, everywhere.
Even in Polish, and it's pineapple.
Ananas is even in Kannada as well as ananas is pineapple. So there are these kind of cultural significance what we get, and this is attained only when you travel apart from your country. So if you can see from this entire video, you do get like what are the limitations, what are the advantages of doing PhD abroad or in India, right? So this is really quite interesting. I think we did cover lots of things about PhDs and your journeys and things. So what do you guys want to say finally to my the YouTube subscribers or the people who are watching. So what's your future thing? What do you guys want to be after 10 years maybe? I know this is a question that you should not be asking.
Interview questions.
Yeah. What do you guys want to do after 10 years? Or where do you see after 10 years? Yashu, you want to go?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so you said key takeaway message. So this is something that there's something close to my heart. So when I was joining the PhD program, my father and I just finished the entrance test, the interview and all of that, and then we were walking back. So by then I had almost decided that I'm doing this PhD, and if I get through the interview and all of that, I'm coming to this place. So we're taking a walk across this beautiful campus in Kharagpur, and then he tells me this one thing that still stays with me. He's like, a PhD, he says very jokingly that this is something I think most people watching this would probably know, but it's like a PhD is knowing more and more about less and less, to the point that you know everything about nothing.
Yes.
When he said this, I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So his advice was, don't get too wrapped up. You keep going down rabbit holes, right? And then to the point that when you come out, you're a very different person. The person who started a PhD and the person who's
That's
finished.
true.
Yeah.
You found so much about, of course, your research topic, but about yourself as well. So
Yeah.
you've learned how to handle failures, you've learned how to persevere, you've learned how to subdue that voice in your head that keeps saying you're not good enough, this is not good enough, you don't know a lot, like
That's
that
true.
imposter. You know, you've learned how to handle a lot of things, and of course it's riddled with hardships, and you've come out a different person, you've emerged stronger, all of that. But one thing is not to get too wrapped up in your own work, and to sort of take that break and look out and observe other things. Maybe you're after doing that PhD, maybe you're not really interested in persevering or pursuing that line of work. Maybe you want to branch out, maybe you want to do something different, just have a different experience.
That's
so
true.
have a nice, I think, vision of other research projects or other things as well. 10 years from now, no, I think I'll pass that on. Oh, very smart.
What do you want to say?
No, I think I 200% agree with what Yashu said, what especially Uncle said as well. You know, so much more. It's very niche area, isn't it? Yeah, 200% agree with that. One thing that I'm really passionate about is obviously healthcare and disease and drugs and pharmacy and now stem cell research as well. But the other thing I'm personally passionate about is healthcare systems. And I don't think I could have been in a better position than this current project manager job that helps me understand the system a bit better. So I've done a lot of the research aspect of the healthcare, what goes into it, what disease mechanisms and all of that. And now I'm doing a bit more patient-public involvement. I'm looking at how it can impact patient in different ways and outputs that are beyond research publications, which also has impact, but that's something that I'm really enjoying. Another thing that I'm really passionate about is communicating with people and collaborating with people. Bring your ideas together. It might be something as small as something like this is your idea, something as a paper we can work on together, and that's something, especially with like-minded people, for the benefit of healthcare and society. That's something I'm very passionate about. So I think I don't know exactly what, but something in that direction, and something to do with food as well. I don't know what yet, but we'll see.
That's nice. I think we did have nice, varied topics, and we did get to know more about Yeshu and then Payal. It's really amazing. I think this podcast or Vodcast can be a beautiful way for you to motivate in order to go for PhD. I really thank you so much for accepting my invitation to this podcast. This is my first podcast, and I'm doing after Women's Day, and I wish you strong women. Very happy Women's Day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, Tribo Geek, do subscribe.